Action, family style. Their, their adult children are economically self sufficient. Most affluent parents who have adult children want to reduce the size of their estate before they pass away. Certainly, this decision makes sense, given that the alternative is to leave their children with a significant estate tax liability. The decision to share their wealth with their children is easy. The difficult decision is how to divide the capital. Affluent parents who have younger children usually believe that the distribution of their wealth will never be a problem. They assume their assets will be distributed equally. Those parents with 4 children, for example, typically state their wealth will be distributed equally among their children, 25% to each. The simple distribution formula becomes more complex as the children mature. Parents of adult children are likely to find that some of their children have a greater need for substantial financial gifts than others. Who should get more? Who should get less? These are questions everyone must answer. Nonetheless, affluent parents are likely to benefit from several important research findings. Parents with non working adult daughters and temporarily unemployed adult sons have a high propensity to provide these children with heavy doses of economic outpatient care. These children are also likely to receive a disproportionately large portion of their parents' estates. The more economically successful offspring are likely to receive smaller levels of EOC and inheritance. That is not fair. Many of the most highly productive sons and daughters receive no wealth transfers whatsoever. Yet, as we have discussed in Chapter 5, that's one reason they're wealthy. Housewives, A or B? Housewives, A or B? Much of the variation in gift giving among different children can be explained by occupation or socioeconomic status and gender. We have found that housewives have the greatest propensity of all major occupation groups to receive inheritances as well as periodic financial gifts from their parents. In fact, housewives are 3 times more likely to receive substantial inheritances from their parents than are adult children of the affluent on average. In essence, housewives rank first in both the size of their inheritance and the incident of inheriting wealth from their parents. They are also most likely to receive significant financial gifts on an annual basis. We have identified 2 distinct types of housewife daughters of the affluent. We'll call them Type A and Type B. Both benefit to different degrees from their parents' belief that non-working women must have money of their own, that the economic deck is stacked against women, and that sons-in-law can never be fully trusted to provide support for their wives and children. The Type A housewife differs significantly from her Type B counterpart. Type A's tend to marry high-income producing successful men. They tend to take leadership roles in caring for their elderly, sometimes disabled parents. The gifts and inheritance they tend to receive are, in part, compensation for these efforts. Efforts their working brothers and sisters are more likely to shy away from. Type A housewives are well educated and tend to be the executrixes or executors of the parents' estates. They are likely to be leaders and volunteers in various local educational and charitable organizations. Interesting table here. Type A housewives are often viewed by their parents as peers and confidants rather than understudies. They are seen as intelligent, strong leaders and advisors and are frequently consulted about important family matters, such as estate and retirement planning, the sale of a family business, and the choice of professional service providers. Type A's are also conversant with estate tax laws. They are likely to encourage their parents to reduce the size of their estate and thus minimize the estate tax by providing gifts to their children. Type A housewives receive substantial cash gifts throughout the early and middle stage of their lives, often from the time they are married. Later, gifts are associated with the purchase of a home and, in some situations, the purchase of investment real estate. The presence of a Type A housewife is of great benefit to affluent parents, as well as to their other adult children, since Type A's often carry the enormous burden of providing for the emotional and medical needs of their elderly parents. Type B housewives, in contrast, are viewed as adult children who need economic outpatient care and even emotional support. They tend to be dependent on others and are unlikely to be leaders in any capacity. Type B tend to marry men who are not likely to produce high incomes. They tend to be less well educated than the women in Type A category. The parents of a Type B housewife often subsidize their daughter's household income in order to help their daughter's family maintain a minimum middle class lifestyle. Type B housewives tend to live in close proximity to their parents. They often accompany their mothers on shopping trips. It's not unusual for middle-aged Type B housewives to receive clothing allowances from their affluent mothers and fathers. Parents also care for their Type B daughters via provisions in wills estate plans. They are provided with cash gifts and inheritance because their parents believe they really need the money. In essence, Type Bs are cared for by their parents instead of the other way around. The parents of Type B housewives tend to hold back from distributing substantial cash gifts to their daughters out of fear that their daughters and their husbands may be poor money managers. Thus, cash gifts from Type B housewives tend to be on a need basis, such as when Type B's husbands is between jobs and when there is a birth in the family. Gifts are often precipitated by crisis and may range from direct cash payments to clothing and tuition reimbursement. Nonetheless, Type Bs receive the bulk of their parents' wealth in the form of inheritance. Often their parents' wills provide specific instructions regarding the distribution schedule and educational funds for their daughters' children. Often the family of the Type B housewife never becomes financially independent. It is not unusual for the Type B housewife in her mid-50s to still be receiving cash subsidies from her parents. Nor is it unusual for the husband of a Type B housewife to work for her parents' business. In some cases, the level of consumption is substantially higher than the objective labor market would indicate. In other words, the son-in-law in these situations is earning more as an employee of his in-law's business than he would working for an objective third party. Even sons-in-laws who are employed outside the family business often moonlight for the family, working part-time at a premium wages for the family business or doing chores or odd jobs for their in-laws. Daughters who are not housewives but are employed in full-time positions are less likely to receive cash gifts and inheritance than their non-working sisters. But even daughters who are employed in high-status occupations are more likely to receive cash gifts and inheritance than their economically successful brothers. Why? As stated previously, affluent parents feel rather strongly that women, even working women, must have money of their own. They also contend that their sons-in-laws can never be fully trusted to remain loyal to support and protect their daughters. Actually, the affluent are rather perceptive in this regard. Our data indicate that more than 4 in 10 of their daughters who marry will be divorced at least once. Affirmative action for women. Affluent parents understand that the income generating opportunities facing men and women in this country are very different. These parents tend to have their own form of economic affirmative action. Consider the following facts. Women account for 46% of the workers in this country, but represent fewer than 20% of the individuals who earn $100,000 or more annually. In 1980, fewer than 40,000 women had annual incomes of $100,000 or more. In 1995, approximately 400,000 women were in this age category. This translates into a tenfold increase. By the year 2000, more than 600,000 women will have incomes in the six-figure and higher category. But again, as in 1995, there will still be 5 men for every woman in this category. Women have made significant progress in regard to the proportion who graduate from professional schools. In 1970, for example, only 8.4% of medical school graduates were women. In 1995, nearly 40% were women. In 1970, women accounted for about 6% of all law school graduates. In 1995, they made up nearly 45%. A high-status occupational title does not automatically translate into a high income, however. A recent census headline stated, "Earnings gaps still apparent even for professional degree holders." In this regard, women employed in professional occupations in 1995 earned only 49.2% of what men in professional occupations earned. How do the salaries of men and women in high income producing occupations compare? See the result of our analysis in Table 6.3. In 20 out of 20 of the highest income producing occupations, women on average earn significantly less than their male counterparts. For example, female physicians earn only 52% of what male physicians earn. Female dentists earn 57.4% of what male dentists earn. Female podiatrists earn 55% of what male podiatrists earn. And female lawyers earn 57.5% of what male lawyers earn. In 1980, approximately 45% of the women in the six-figure and higher income category did not work. Conversely, 55% earned $100,000 or more via employment. These percentages have not changed appreciably since 1980, nor are they likely to change through the year 2005. In sharp contrast, nearly 80% of the men in this country who earn $100,000 or more are employed. Most of the other 20% are over 60 years of age and retired. The vast majority of non-working women who have annual incomes of $100,000 or more inherited their wealth and or received substantial financial gifts from their parents, grandparents, and or spouses. Their income is typically generated from interest, dividends, capital gains, net rental income, and such. Women own nearly 1/3 of the small businesses in America. However, approximately 2/3 of these businesses have annual revenues of under $50,000. Working women are more than 4 times more likely to leave the workplace than the working men. The objective data make it quite clear. In America, the odds are against women earning high incomes. Some of this variation in income can certainly be explained by biases in the economic marketplace, but biases alone do not fully explain the fact that there are 5 men for every 1 woman in the top 1% of the earned income distribution. Could it be that the tendency for affluent parents to subsidize their daughters is helping to perpetuate this inequality? Daughters of wealthy couples tend to have careers of their own. Why? In the past 20 years, the affluent population has typically been composed of one type of household. More than 80% have been married couples with children in which the wife did not work full-time. What message did this send to the daughters of such couples? Simply stated, mother did not work and the marriage survived, so perhaps I should not work. It is difficult to argue with such logic. The traditional affluent family system does, in fact, function quite well. Affluent couples have a divorce rate that is less than half the norm. The father works, the mother mothers and does everything else for her family. System is very often copied by the female products of such marriages. Many affluent parents actually encourage their daughters not to work, not to have their own careers, and not to be economically and psychologically independent. Affluent parents instill this dependence characteristic in their daughters over time with subtle cues. Thus, many affluent parents communicate messages such as the following to their daughters. Don't worry. If you don't want to have a career of your own, you don't have to worry about money. We will help you out financially. If you do have a career, if you do become a big success and become independent, you will not be receiving any major financial gifts or inheritance from us. Yikes. The weak and the strong. Anne and Beth, housewives and daughters. Anne is 35 years of age. She is the younger daughter of a couple we'll call Robert and Ruth Jones. Her parents are millionaires. Mr. Jones owns and operates several businesses in the distribution industry. Mrs. Jones is a traditional housewife. She never completed college and has been employed outside the home. She is, however, active in several noble causes in her community. When her children were very young, she served on the PTA. Her daughter Anne is very candid about her relationship with her parents. It would be so easy to take money from my parents for the house, for private school tuition, but it always comes with strings. My sister Beth, aged 37, learned that, and she does not lead her own life. She has learned that the dole comes with a price. Do it mother's way. Anne understood the components of the parental control equation early on. When she was first married, she and her husband sought employment out of town. She insulated herself from her parents' influence by putting more than 1,000 miles between herself and them. Anne gave up her own career after her second child was born, but unlike her sister Beth, Anne never accepted economic outpatient care from her parents. Anne became sensitive to the real cost of being on the dole by observing her sister's experience. According to Anne, Beth and her family live in subsidized housing. Ouch. Mr. and Mrs. Jones made a sizable down payment on Beth's house. They also dole out thousands of dollars to Beth each year for housing and other expenses. She receives $20,000 in cash from her parents every Christmas. Beth lives less than 2 miles from her parents. One of the proven ways that domineering parents control their adult children is by living close to them. Anne reports there is some confusion about home ownership between Beth and her parents. It seems that Mother is always at Beth's, invited or not, and Mother was more involved with the choice of Beth's home than Beth was. Beth married and became a mother before completing college. She and her husband lived with her parents for 3 years after they were married. This gave her husband an opportunity to complete college. Neither worked, even part-time, during this period. Beth's husband completed college and accepted an administrative position with a regional corporation, but after less than 2 years, his position was eliminated. He then accepted a position as a vice president of administration in his father-in-law's business. According to Anne, the vice president of administration was a newly titled position. The former title was office manager, but as Anne explained, the job pays very well and you should get a load of the splendid fringe benefit package. It is difficult under such conditions for Beth and her husband to develop much self-confidence. Anne's parents, especially her father, do not show respect for Anne's husband. According to Anne, they always felt he was socially, economically, and intellectually Beth's inferior. Ouch. They demonstrate much more respect for Anne's husband, who graduated with honors from a prestigious college and earned a master's degree with distinction at the age of 24. Robert and Ruth constantly tell their friends and relations of the great accomplishments of our Anne's husband. Robert and Ruth rolled out the red carpet for Anne's future husband the first time he paid them a visit. They were very impressed with his academic credentials. Anne reported that during this brief stay, Beth's husband, then a boarder with his in-laws, acted much like a waiter. Father-in-law Robert would direct his son-in-law to mix and serve drinks and snacks. For example, after serving cocktails one evening, Robert referred to his son-in-law as a bozo. Golly. Anne and her beau were shocked. This treatment left a lasting impression on the couple. Anne pledged that she and her husband would never become bozos in her parents' eyes. To date, she has kept her pledge. This is the case even through Anne's parents' pressure her unrelentingly to accept economic outpatient care. In contrast, Robert and Ruth regularly ask Beth's husband to do chores for them. They treat him more like a handyman and a chauffeur than the man who married their older daughter. Why does Beth's husband tolerate this situation? Because he has been conditioned to do so. He and Beth have high consumption lifestyle congruent with that of his in-laws. Yet their ability to sustain such a lifestyle is a function of their being controlled. Robert and Ruth have communicated a central message to Beth, not so much in words as in deeds. Beth, you and your husband are not capable of generating enough income on your own to maintain an ascribed station in life. You are economically handicapped. You and your husband need our special brand of economic outpatient care. Are Robert and Ruth correct that Beth and her husband would be unable to achieve in life without assistance? An objective third party would contend that they are. But what would the same objective third party say if he had examined the situation from its origin? He might have concluded that Robert and Ruth made a special effort to improve their hypothesis. After even just a few years of receiving aggressive, overbearing economic outpatient care, Beth and her husband have lost much of their ambition, economic self-confidence, and independence. No one will ever know if this couple could have functioned productively on its own. Beth and her husband were never given this opportunity. The role of enlightened parents is to strengthen the weak. Robert and Ruth did just the opposite. They weakened the weak and continue to do so today. Not surprisingly, they never appreciated their role in causing much of their dependency Beth and her husband experience today. Today, Anne has some resentment, even bitterness, toward her parents. She holds them responsible for creating the economic and emotional dependency that her sister and brother-in-law must deal with every day. Anne has learned much from Beth and her husband's experiences. Anne is especially sensitive about her parents' role in usurping control of her sister's children. Oh my gosh. In them, the mistakes of the past are likely to be repeated. Anne can only wish that her parents had followed some simple rules about raising children to be independent. They can't now, but Anne can. It's not too late for her. Anne will never allow her parents to control any portion of her life or the lives of her husband and children.